Hello, and welcome to our fireside chat on how to use AI to drive your business forward. My name's Natasha Bradley, Director of Empower M365, and I'm joined today by Jack Watson, Managing Director of Bytes. So, welcome, Jack. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Natasha. Thanks very much. Thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and kind of talk about this subject. I'm Jack Watson. I'm the Managing Director of Byte Software Services. We're a digital transformation and cybersecurity partner in the UK.
Perfect, thank you. So, Jack, I've been reading quite a lot about AI, as you can imagine, and I came across a Deloitte report that states in the UK, at the back end of last year, it was estimated that 7 million people are now using generative AI tools in the workplace. So some of the things I've been reading over the past sort of week are around Shoesmith. So Shoesmith, if no one's seen it, has put a target onto their employees to deliver 1 million prompts in this new financial year. And if they deliver that through Copilot, then they will access £1 million of bonus. So it's quite incredible, really, but it just shows that they're going to be forward thinking when it comes to AI. And then I've come across Aberdeen City Council, and they've been using Microsoft 365 Copilot to offload tasks and to free up workforce. And they're projected 241% ROI in time saving and improved productivity, which is absolutely amazing. So some great initiatives and value across multiple different sectors. So Jack, in your experience, how would you define AI's role in business today?
I think those are some really interesting stats, Natasha. And in my experience, it's a platform shift. AI is a platform shift. The first thing you've got to do is you've got to look at your data. You've got to consider your security, and you've got to also consider how you leverage cloud. I think the definition for me within business is that it helps you reshape process. It can help you gain a competitive advantage. It can help you monetize your data. I think if you can execute a successful AI strategy as an organization, you can deliver stronger growth. You can have a greater degree of resilience for the future, better margins, and improve your customer engagement and understanding as well. So all of those things really represent the promise and the power of artificial intelligence and what it means. And certainly in the way that we work with our customers, and what we're seeing is there's a massive opportunity for helping people and meeting them where they are on their journey. So I think that's a really critical component in terms of where it sits in its role, because it's about a priority as well. What are the opportunities and what are the risks? And one of the biggest risks out there, other than cybersecurity, is the risk of doing nothing and not embracing something which is a wave of new technology and opportunity for us all.
Yeah, and you mentioned there, about risk, but also competitive advantage. And I think it's a delicate balance between both, to let the growth take over, but also protect your organization. And across industry, again, we're seeing, across our industry anyway, we're seeing quite a lot of embracement of Copilot. And some of the two of the sort of industry competitors that I've seen are ANS and Softcat. So, from an ANS perspective, they're sort of using Copilot and agents to streamline the selling process. So they're forecasted an increase of closing their deals of a ratio of about 6.25% increase. And Softcat, I think we spoke about this the other day, but from a Softcat perspective, they're using it for time savings and quality improvement. So their sales teams are really reported a 20% admin time saving in sales, which, let's be honest, as salespeople would love to have a 20% decrease in admin. So how can AI be leveraged in your experience to gain that competitive advantage above what ANS and Softcat are doing?
Well, I think the way that Microsoft in particular characterize this is you can draw on this intelligence and use artificial intelligence and draw on this intelligence as a utility. And you can do that through partners, or you can seek to build that intelligence yourself, and all the productivity gains and advantages that can kind of come with that. When you talk about organizations like ANS and Softcat, don't intimately know those organizations other than, as a peer within the technology channel. However, fantastic businesses with wonderful operating models, both of them. So I think it's unsurprising, really, that you look in the same way that Bytes are looking to How do you gain more efficiency, particularly within, I'm an old seller, so still within the sales community in terms of saving people's time. I think that's one of our most precious resources that we have, and the ability to leverage artificial intelligence, even at a basic layer, to say, how does this save me time in my day? I think the crucial thing for all of us is, what are you then going to use your save time to achieve? And I think that's, that comes back to the ROI and what you want to achieve as an organization in terms of, my level of investment in an artificial intelligence project. What are the risks that it fails? What are the objectives that I have? And I think if your objective is to gain a competitive advantage within your particular market, you could look at it three ways, more than three. But if I look at three, you can look at it for the individual. You can look at the individual, what type of career are they trying to build, and how much does that depend on not just kind of what you know, but how well you scale yourself through intelligent agents. Um, you can look at it from a company lens in terms of, how do I improve efficiency? How do I gain a level of automation, a greater level of automation and productivity within the organization? How can I leverage this platform to deliver better wellness for my staff, health, wealth, and
Yeah.
happiness for employees at Byte Software Services, for example? How can I leverage it to create more dynamic pricing engines, to look at behaviors in order to make better and more informed decisions for my customers and for my staff? And then, I think what we're seeing now is an advent of, how can I grow my workforce but not the payroll? And
Yeah.
within, change in government changes and employer NICs most recently, and increasing costs and legal guidance around rights of employment. Some of these can represent opportunities, but also safety, security, and barriers to certain organizations employing more staff. And you might want to look at creating AI agency in order to gain not just the productivity improvements of the staff that you already employ, but also that can have a consideration in terms of employing new headcount into the organization as well. All these things marry up into, well, how do I gain competitive advantage, better margins, improved process, a better customer experience, and actually give you a level of competitiveness within your own market, but also go into other people's market too. Leverage your data in order to create new lines and new revenue and new opportunities. And I think that's something we're realizing at Bytes in the way that we engage with our customers, is we're not just saving them money, we're not just meeting them on their AI journey, we're also helping them make more money. It's not just about saving money on buying your software or consuming your cloud
Mhm.
and architecting it in the right way. It's actually, well, let's look at some really creative ideas that can help leverage new revenue streams for you as an organization.
Yeah, no, really good points there. And I know that Bytes have got a really great AI strategy, not only for their clients but also internal. So, what would you say to organisations that are considering integrating AI into their business strategy?
I think, for me, and certainly the way that I look at it internally is, for our organization, it's more of a data challenge than a technology challenge, first and
Yeah.
foremost. You got to look at what underpins that, and I think that, and moving to cloud in a secure way, so that you can fully exploit generative AI to its full capability. I think they're all key factors. I think you've got to understand what your organizational data responsibilities are, and what the Gen AI demands are on your capacity as an organization as well. Certainly, when we talk to customers, that's something that we're helping them with. And it's not necessarily the most attractive work. In terms of helping them with their data strategy, but that is what is required. Some of the biggest concerns that customers have within this area really are around data loss prevention.
Yeah.
The cyber risk of prompt injection attack, the explainability and observability of what you're building and what you're doing it and what people are using it for, and the ethics that underpin that. I think it's really important that you've got to consider an AI ethics and have an AI ethics strategy, a policy as an organization. So certainly helping companies in terms of refine that and find their own way and use case for these. And some of the use cases we're seeing are, there's some wonderful use cases out there that I think you can apply to pretty much every corporate or public sector entity. They're quite generic, but they help, and you can get productivity gains and process improvement as part of that. But then there are others that are unique to particular industries and organizations in terms of what you want to achieve. And whether that be through a Copilot Studio, or you want to actually go and build out on an AWS or Azure platform, there's plenty of options out there. And partners like Bytes, it's that paradox of choice. We help them with that choice, but we also help them with the consideration as to what is it you're trying to achieve. Let's pick a project that's going to have a strong positive impact on you as an organization, making more money or saving money or improving wellness and productivity of your staff, improving your customer satisfaction. Those are the types of things that I think that organizations need to consider. And the other consideration that for me that always goes into this is consider the risk of doing nothing. Your staff
Yeah.
have ChatGPT or other providers. They're putting your company and sensitive data into those platforms. Whether you like it or not, someone's doing it. You've always got to operate on your lowest level of security in terms of your employee or partners.
Yeah.
And you've got to factor all of those things. The other thing that I'd add, Natasha, is that when you're consuming your SaaS products, like Bytes do, we sell a lot of SaaS products and help customers deploy and adopt them in order to gain business advantage. But when we're consuming those SaaS products ourselves, you throw a rock out the window, you've got to hit a SaaS vendor right now that's infusing artificial intelligence into their platform, into their app. Now, what is that AI platform? Where does that where does that information go? We're looking at that if you just, even on its most basic level, if we're putting into a new finance system and we're looking at OCR technology. OCR has been around for decades, right? But
Yeah.
now, these same OCR companies, new ones are coming to the fore, but the old ones are still around, all infused with AI. Does it necessarily need AI in order to improve? Is it just rehousing it in a different form? But arguably, that same OCR technology that you could have been using now with its most recent upgrade leverages AI, and where does the data go? So even if you don't have a specific project for your AI strategy, the SaaS apps that you're consuming have AI infused, and you need to know where it goes. You need to have a
Yeah.
policy around that. You need to have a partner that helps advise, on the assumption or the basis that most people consume 40, 50, 150, 250, 2,000 SaaS applications within their organization. How do you control
Yeah.
that? So it's a good time to work at Bytes. It's a good time to be in the technology industry and be on calls like this and talk about, what that paradox of choice, the opportunities and risks that sit innately within this.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you made about the SaaS products that everyone's consuming, and now they're adding AI into upgrades because, it could be a job in itself to manage the risk register on those applications and where they're coming from and where the data's going, just to make sure that your information is safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at AI, AI security, it's a big bet for ours. We're very deep and broad cybersecurity capability
Yeah.
at Bytes. You look at how organizations are infusing artificial intelligence into their security platforms. You also let's look outwardly for a moment at the Softcats, the ANSs, and peers within our community, whereby simple things like you're leveraging AI in order to triage your security warnings, notifications, and actions and activity from your NDR, managed detection and response security managed services. You really only want to act on the data that's most important. So how do you sift through these things and all of these artifacts to actually just what is actionable intelligence for me from a security perspective? I obviously love that from a sales point of view as well, which you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
which is, now for me, one of the biggest challenges, I think, if a really basic level for sales managers across every industry in the United Kingdom is get your salespeople to update CRM, right?
Yeah.
It's a challenge, okay? Some are better than others at doing that, and but it is no doubt a challenge because the accuracy of data then informs what it is that you can then achieve on behalf of your suppliers, your customers, your partners. Now with artificial intelligence, you have a compelling reason to make sure the data is right and you put it in, because you can reason across that, your close rates, your likelihood, your behaviors, the behaviors of your customers, the propensity data, how different, how things, we've got thousands of customers across Bytes. They buy a Minecraft solution to complement their Microsoft Office 365 E5, for example. Why? They do it for 5 reasons. This is typically, the types of customers as to when they buy them, why they buy it, and you can reason over that data across 4,000 customers and say, actually, I can really help you with the technology selection and commercial advantage of your choice of your next solution in this area that improves, in this example, email archiving, email security, continuity, and backup. But you can do that across tens of thousands of SaaS applications as an organization. So that's really interesting to me in terms of, it puts the power in the hands of the seller to deliver more value for that customer based on those insights. But you're not going to get
Yeah.
any of that if you don't update your CRM and put your data in there. If you're hearing this, Bytes salespeople and Softcat and ANS salespeople, and our wider community, that's so there's a compelling reason to do it now.
There
It's
is,
going to
there
help
is.
it, it's help you close more as a salesperson to deliver greater customer value.
And let's be honest, Jack, if every salesperson can reduce their admin by 20%, it's worth getting your CRM up to date to
Yeah, I
enable that
mean,
to
I
happen.
just look
It's
at it
got to be like,
myself. We're a customer zero of Copilot, so I use Copilot meetings.
yeah,
Yes, there's the obvious stuff that it saves you time on on your calls and reviewing things and summarizing things. Yeah, that's fun. That's fantastic. That kind of white paper, how do you get started on a document? I think it can
yeah,
really support you in those areas. So there's already significant savings that we've realized as an organization in this particular area, just kind of, let's call it, out of the box. But the big thing that
yeah,
I would call out for anybody watching this is Copilot Chat. Copilot Chat, free version, enterprise grade security, freely available to M365 customers.
yeah,
Come talk to Bytes, come talk to come talk to Microsoft. Look at come talk to you about the opportunity that represents for you as an organization before you start buying the M365 Copilot product, chargeable
yeah.
subscription for your organization. Use Copilot
I
Chat.
think
Um,
Yeah, and
uh,
I think people are just not aware of that security feature, Jack. I think that's a good shout because I think we were doing I was doing a session to an NHS trust on Copilot, and we were going through the security elements within Copilot Chat, and the CEO sort of said, "Oh, I was just about to sign off an order for ChatGPT Enterprise, and now I don't need to do that because now I know that Microsoft free version can offer the same security features." So great comment there and great point.
and you can add agentic AI to it as well, right? On a consumption based. So there are horses for courses here, and Microsoft
Yeah.
have changed the terminology of this as they typically do. That
Yeah.
complexity doesn't always help customers, but it keeps Bytes in business in helping customers clarify what it is
Yeah.
that's a good fit for you as an organization. And I think that has really wide ranging impact on organizations. Natasha, you and I, let's go, for example, we work for the same business. If we work for the same business and I have Copilot and you don't, because we as an organization have chosen not to purchase Copilot across all of our users, and I just happen to be in the fortunate bucket that's using it, we go for the same job. I've got a coach in my pocket, not just a mental health coach, a physical coach, a financial advisor, a researcher, but somebody, something that actively helps me improve, prepare, and deliver for an interview or presentation if you and I were going for the same job. One of us has an unfair advantage because I've got AI enabled, and I'm leveraging that, not just to reason outwardly, but also over the data that I have accessible within the organization in terms of our mission, our goals, our strategy, what it is that, who's interviewing us. So that dynamic really interests me,
Yeah.
on two levels. One, if you're an organization that's 1,000 user organization, then you only buy 100 Copilot licenses. What about that kind of imbalance that you have across the organization? Obviously here for me, the answer is Copilot Chat and have a blended model across that.
Yeah.
So it's those types of kind of iterations and thinking that you need to kind of think about as an organization. The other thing is, of course, as these models develop, it will learn the intonation of your voice, Natasha, what you like, what you don't like, the decisions that you make. So, I certainly foresee a future whereby, in this example of you and I working for the same organization, if you were to leave my organization, Natasha, I would say, okay, what would Natasha do? What would she
Yeah.
say? And because we would still have access to that reasoning and data and input as to what it is and how you work, how you write, how you type, how you speak, how your preferences and your responses, and what is it that Natasha would do in your absence. So I think what interests me is, and maybe where law perhaps inevitably will catch up on this, which is, do you have a right to take that digital presence and information to your new place of employment? Is that even technically capable in terms of being able to draw that out of a tendency within Byte Software Services to go and work
Mm.
for Softcat?
Yeah.
Um, those are really interesting things in terms of how this the kind of, let's call it, blast radius and the ripple effect of this will affect all industries and the way that we work and interact with each other.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you've probably come across is people are scared and fearful, and what's going to happen to my role. And I was on a Microsoft webinar yesterday, and the comment they said is people don't need to be scared of AI to take their job. It's people who are using AI. So going back to your point, if you're only given 100 people in your organisation out of 1,000, then you're disadvantaging the rest of the organisation. So it really is looking at the value across your organisation to deliver AI and Copilot as a group to show benefit, which I think. So, Jack,
Absolutely.
have you seen any examples of implementations of AI Copilot that drives growth, that you've seen that growth metric? Was that too early, would you say, in the industry?
We're seeing an influx of use cases where this is making a meaningful impact. So I thought about a couple of ones that we could maybe talk about. The first one I'm going to talk about, which is a really controversial one. So here's a really good
Okay,
one.
great. I
So the
love
number
that.
one, here's my biggest example of driving higher profitability, and it is going on the dark web, leveraging AI in order to improve your advanced phishing and vulnerability, looking for known vulnerabilities and targeted attacks against UK PLC or public sector organizations. So
Yeah,
the number one most profitable opportunity out there is leveraging AI for bad.
yeah,
And it's important for everybody to kind of be aware of that, because
yeah, of
we are
course.
all on the receiving end of that. That's a reality that is out there, that people are, in the past, what they would do is acquire ransomware tools. And on the dark web, they even have 24/7 support services to kind of make sure that they're giving you after sales care on the offensive weapons, cyber weapons that you're acquiring in order to do harm, and in order to make profit. So there's a big use case right there. Not one that I'm advocating for anybody, but what I'm hopefully doing is kind of showing that that's a reality that's out there. So the level of if we just keep it back to its simplest form, the level of intelligence and sophistication that sits around cybersecurity attack and targeted phishing, for example, will take a quantum leap in the context of the language, the visuals, that behavioral analysis, have it scrub my LinkedIn, scrub my social media if I was on it, scrub other YouTube videos and other kind of profile of me, have that large language model use this interview to learn my voice, and use all of those things in order to profit in a nefarious way.
Yeah,
So how do we combat that? I think that's one. Let me talk about my positive stories against that. So I think there's two ones which, if I define growth as embracing a technology that performs us to new heights, that's what we talk about at Bytes. Not just make more money, save more time. How does it propel us to new heights? And that's all about the human to AI to human interaction, not AI to AI. And we use our or lose our morality and enjoyment in that engagement with our customers, partners, suppliers, and each other. So I think in that, we've got an example whereby we've got a London borough whereby through adopting Copilot, Copilot Studio, they were able to reduce the time to response for housing crisis and supporting child neglect within the borough, and how they support their citizenry in those areas. So that's a meaningful way whereby they're leveraging Microsoft Copilot Studio in order to improve that process, improve that speed to intervention and support within that borough. And that's something that you can say, okay, how many other, they happen to have a very high concentration of homelessness within that particular borough. How many other London boroughs, cities, towns and cities across the United Kingdom share that same desire to improve those services and that support to people seeking that refuge. I think that's a really good story for us that we've seen, and a good example to kind of call out, whereby it's about human impact. It's about what is it doing for people, not just saving time and money. Um, the other examples that we've seen quite commonly are AI powered virtual agents. um, they're resolving customer issues faster. They're helping you diagnose and triage technical problems. They're even from a sales capacity identifying cross-sell and upsell opportunities based on behavioral data and propensity data as well. So I think that's a common one. Most organizations having some element of let's help support our customers better, and also a kind of sales function within the organization too. So I think that works across two levels, and we're seeing a great deal of that. The AI triage on cybersecurity, on activity warnings and events. Your energy goes where your attention goes. So being able to kind of reason across that and really dedicate your time to the things that make the best impact. That's, I think, a guide for me and a story that comes out in all the use cases, the hundreds of use cases that we're seeing as an organization. So when you engage with customers, partners like Bytes, you get the benefit of that quite broad aperture as to what's going on, what people are using it for, where it's working, and you can seek to replicate that and overcome this challenge of, is the juice worth the squeeze? Where do I go first? What direction should we take? So it's all about meeting a customer wherever they are on their AI journey or data journey, in those examples. And then there are two examples that I would talk about that are kind of more kind of futuristic, near future and reality. One of them is, let's talk about that example where we work in the same organization, Natasha, and you want to move. It's that legal digital presence. It's about how to use AI in terms of the privacy concerns that sit around that, not just for companies but for individuals, and how do you support, preserve that, and create a mechanism that allows you still to have freedom of movement and not disadvantage people from moving from a, let's call it, a tenancy and Copilot environment whereby it's learned to be highly responsive to my needs as an individual within Bytes as an organization. But if I were to move to a competitor, I've got to start again. Heaven forbid, they might not even have Copilot, and I'm back to the dark ages. Or
Yeah.
I'm starting on on a vanilla tenancy, and it's learning from me all over again, and all the good and the bad and the ugly of me as a personality within the organization. Um, the other area that I would call out is cyber insurance.
Yeah.
Most organizations need, they're going for cyber insurance. You need cyber insurance. How do you reduce that time to gaining cyber insurance as an organization? But also, how do you know that it's priced well and that your premiums are optimized, both as an insurer, but also as somebody who's seeking to gain that insurance? I think it's a massive opportunity because there's still so much that's missed. And the easy example that I'll call out is most organizations not unpacking or not having the capacity within their organization to fully realize and adopt the compliance and security functionality that exists within Microsoft 365. And
Yeah,
so
for
we
sure.
help loads of customers with that, which actually reduces their cyber premiums, but also can actually, these are basic requirements like multi-factor authentication that are required to even go and get cyber insurance. I think those are good examples as to, how that drives growth. That drives growth for the insurer, and that also drives growth for the organization in terms of their maturity and competency as an organization.
Yeah, no, I think some really good examples. And I'll just pick up on, you mentioned a few times human to AI and back to human, etc. So how do you balance automation with the need for human oversight when it comes to sort of AI processes and things?
For me, it start with an AI ethics policy. Start and within that policy, a degree of recognition that you need observability and explainability as to what you're using AI for. Um, the security and the data residency of where's the data go, and what category does that then put you in? Because arguably, in some of the sales examples that we've used here, you are leveraging AI in order to manipulate, for want of a better word, but let's use sell. That's a better word. Sell to a client. Now, I'm selling to that client because I'm going to help them with their objectives and their goals. But
Yeah,
nevertheless, it puts it in a high risk category that you're leveraging artificial intelligence in order to change somebody's mind or steer them in a particular direction
yeah.
or a positive, in terms of technology selection. So I think, when you look at that as a process and you're leveraging it in a kind of more automated way, you've got to be able to understand what you're using it for, be able to explain how it works, um, not just to your customers when asked,
Mhm.
but to your internal staff. And then
Yeah,
also, that's going to be really helpful if you're under cyber attack and it starts doing crazy things that you don't want it to do. You got to put it right. You got to fix it. So you got to know where to go, what's gone wrong, and what's that baseline you then need to bring it back to. So I think that human to AI to human interaction is really important and a mainstay for us as an organization. We don't want AI talking to AI. I think there is a facility to do that in a more verticalized sense, whereby I will have an artificial intelligence agent, multiple agents. One of them might be my chief of staff. I have an agent that is chief of staff for Bright Software Services MD, which then talks to other agents that might be the agent that supports head of finance or head of sales, chief commercial officer Haley Mooney, or another area of the department. So there is a degree of connectivity in terms of how these agents talk together, but it does roll up to ultimately an individual that you're making their life easier. So ethics, privacy, governance. Those are the three things that you need to think about in the context of that human oversight with when you're adopting artificial intelligence.
perfect. And we're sort of coming to the end now. So just want to get your opinion on challenges that businesses are facing when they're adopting AI. Obviously, as an adoption organization, we have our own view, but it'd be good just to hear what your view is on the challenges that people are having when adopting AI.
They've got challenge. Most organizations got challenges in responding to an increasing sophistication of cyber threat. So that capacity and capability within their cyber teams for data loss
Yeah,
prevention and a lot of things that we've kind of talked about here in the context of an AI strategy. These are all very real things, even if you weren't adopting AI, and
yeah,
in terms of governance. The capacity and need for data leadership. We're seeing a lot of that from our customers. How do you leverage the best data and the best AI models to achieve your goals? And I think we're seeing an increasing appetite from people to around that, and that speaks directly to the challenge that there isn't enough skills in that particular area, and some
yeah.
organizations don't hold those skills internally, so they look for partners like ourselves to help address that. I think you've got to address data where it lives.
Yeah,
Whether that be your data foundation is based on Fabric and you're leveraging Microsoft AI Foundry, but you've really got to look at that's the fuel for agentic AI and getting the best from it. So you don't want reasoning over poor data, and that's a big challenge. A lot of people have got poor unstructured data. So you need to on premise as well. So
on
I think
premise.
that's a
Yeah,
real challenge for a lot of organizations. Um, how do you keep pace with it? This thing's moving so fast. And look at Fabric and Foundry, for example. Where do I start? What does this mean for me? Um, so I think that's a big challenge for organizations is where do I go first? Where do I start? Where can I minimize the risk of failure of this project and make sure that I'm getting tangible returns? In whatever you define those as an organization, there's a real risk of data overshare, leakage, siloed data. Um, all these things are factors that kind of sit within it. I think
Yeah.
there's a huge challenge around not just failed projects, but overspend. We're seeing an increasing number of boards that are involved in large cloud commitments on AWS and Azure and GCP. Now, be honest, a lot of those commitments that we're seeing and we're being brought in at a late stage on where we haven't been involved from the origins is they're making these huge cloud commitments based on consumption that isn't optimized. And those commitments come with commitment for more spend or a certain ceiling of growth and spend. You're going to burst through that if you're consuming, if you don't have a strong control and handle on artificial intelligence and
Yeah.
consumption. You'd even burst through it, even if you just talk about like in modern workplace, if you adopted a model whereby you didn't have Copilot Studio and you're licensing it on a per user basis, you were doing it on a consumption basis based on the number of prompts or something along those lines, or the number of the number of prompts or the usage of your agentic AI. That is just the utility. Once you turn that tap on, it's going to rocket. That's a real challenge in terms of how you have cost control around this as well. For me, if I were to summarize it, the reality is really setting in on what it means to have a data-driven culture as an organization. It's a cultural change. You've got to have a high degree of change management around that. People are still the main barriers to success, and that requires skills and education, experience and expertise within your organization, or bring it with a partnership in order to
Yeah.
help you move forward. Last thing I think I would say is technical debt. In a lot of cases, you've got to move from on-premise to cloud. And there's still a lot of organizations that need help in doing that, and doing it in an optimal way. And you've got to fund these projects. And that's where we see a significant appetite from our customers, where they're asking for our help, which is help us fund this. There's loads of mechanisms in our experience that we can help deliver that. But it's how do we get that off the ground? And we look at it three ways. I mean, first one is the project will have an ROI and we'll be able to demonstrate that to you as part of the design and engagement that we have. We'll also be able to garner funding from whatever technology or platforms you're leveraging in order to deliver this in a secure way. And also, if you're a Bytes customer, we'll take a look at your software and IT spend. And if it's not with Bytes, we'll be able to save you a hell of a lot of money on it. And we'll be able to invest that in gaining this next layer of technology as an organization. Those are all the kind of factors that I think really kind of sit in the kind of challenges that we see in this opening act of AI.
Perfect. And I sort of said this stat at the beginning, but I think this is really important to finish on. So if I just say there's over 7 million people using AI at work. So if we're not providing a secure environment for our users to be creative in AI, we could be putting our organizations at risk. So
Yeah,
Jack, any further insights before I sort of finish the call?
Yeah, I think AI represents a massive opportunity for all of us. And for me, what it represents is an opportunity for people to improve and support each other more in whatever business you are in, public sector or corporate. And I think if you can take that lens, it can do amazing things to the health, wealth, and happiness of your employees and your customers.
Yeah, fabulous. I think that's a great place to end. So Jack, thank you for the great insights. It's been so great to talk to you. And everybody, thank you very much for listening. And I hope you have a great day. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.